Hey everyone, this is April. Welcome back to my podcast, My Solo Chronicles. And today in this episode, I know I sound like overly happy, but that's because I'm back home in Michigan. Yay! I made it. And it was a long 3 days of driving on the road, but it was so fantastic to as I transition into this new, like I say, new chapter of my life where soon I'll be going overseas. It was just the 3 days of driving really allowed me to reflect on so many things that have, happened in my life in California, as well as just, how you just think back on the good memories of, days past. And as I was driving, I thought about all the leaps of faith that I've actually done as far as just going and just trusting my God and going forward and living my life and reaching for my dreams. And I've said in previous episodes that I've always had a bucket list of places that I wanted to live in. And I've actually gotten to do that, which is New York, the UK, and finally California. I was about to say Canada. Not trying to go to Canada, but Canada's beautiful. Don't y'all at me, okay? Anyways, but I got to live in California, and Japan is kind of like a fluke because I've always wanted to go there, but I never really pictured myself living there. Well, that's going to happen. Well, by the time this is released, it'll be February, but next month is when I'll be going over. But anyways, speaking of New York, I titled this episode New York Leap because it was literally a last minute leap of complete total faith that I moved to New York. And out of all the places I've been, New York has been the one place where I've actually been there longer. Like I was there almost 7 years. And when I tell you, I literally, whenever I had a chance and I wasn't working, I took the chance to go out and just discover this huge place that's called the Big Apple. And it is a big apple, let me tell you, because there's 5 boroughs. My favorite boroughs are, of course, Brooklyn. Who doesn't love Brooklyn, right? Because I mean, there's the Brooklyn Bridge that's like right there. And then I finally ended up living in Manhattan because I worked in Manhattan as well, and I loved Queens because of there's a certain part of Queens that you can get like the best Jamaican beef patties. I love those, and I have yet to have those again like I did when I was there. Shout out to my sister friend Tari, who was she was my road dog. She was my hangout buddy. We always did stuff together. That's a whole nother podcast for itself as well because there's some stories, hilarious ones too. But it was a leap of faith for me to just move to New York and just live that New York dream. And like I said, I was there for almost 7 years and I enjoyed every bit of it. And as I was driving, I thought back to how when I decided to move to New York, I just did it. My grandparents had passed away. I finally had got my mom at the time settled in a nice, place that was good for her. And I say, you know what? I have done all I can do as far as just helping take care of family. Now it was time to just take care of me. And before that, I was actually going back and forth to New York just to visit, just to kind of get a feel of the city and if I really, really was, if I ever thought about moving there, could I do it? And I wouldn't, I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. And I tell this story whenever somebody asks me about New York and if I ever intend to move back. I love y'all, New York, but I will not be coming back. Thank you very much. Not to live. But anyways, I always tell the story of when I got ready to go or move there. I had a neighbor who was a pastor, and she had a home for abusive women who were transitioning away from that. And this home was a way for them to not only feel safe, but just start to regain their life back and try to get on their feet so that they can take care of themselves or take care of themselves and their children if they had. And I remember calling her, and literally, no kidding, this is maybe I want to say 4 days before I got ready to move to New York, I called the pastor and I say, "Hey, I want you to come and clear out anything in my house." Because at that point, when my granddad was the last one to pass, my grandma had passed like 4 years before him, so I was pretty much taking care of the house. So, and we were renting, so it wasn't a big thing. And I had took out all the personal items that I wanted. I kind of gave personal stuff to family members if they wanted it, but I called the pastor and I says, if you want anything for your, your shelter, definitely come and get it. And so when she came over, she looked and she said, "Well, what can I take?" And I told her, because mind you, I'm leaving in 4 days to move to New York. I just decided to do it. I'm just gonna up and just go. I says, "Whatever is not nailed down, you are allowed to take." And when I tell you, she called two guys and they took everything. It literally took 3 hours for them to completely clear the house out. And I mean, it was bare. They took everything. They were so quick and swift with their stuff. They even took, the little scratchy pads that you use to clean pots and pans and stuff. They even took that. And I laughed and I said, "Wow, you guys even took that." And she said, "Well, you did say take whatever you want that's not nailed down." So once that was settled, okay, now I can actually really prepare to move to New York. Now, y'all, like I said, I wouldn't recommend anybody doing this. I prepare a lot better now than I did back then. Back then, I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to do it." But I only had $250 to my name. Yep, you heard me correctly. $250. How I was going to stretch that when I moved to New York, I have no idea. But I had a plan, sort of. I can remember when I got ready to go, a snowstorm decided to hit. Now, I'm actually traveling on the Greyhound bus. That's back then when I was just, like I said, I just didn't care. When I was ready to go somewhere, I was going. I didn't care how I was getting there. So there were no buses going out, and they had kind of pushed all the scheduled buses to leave. They had put them on hold because of this major snowstorm that Michigan is notorious for getting around January, February. And I was leaving in January. The person that I was dating at the time, him and his grandma let me stay with them. And I was with them for maybe, I want to say, a day or two, because like I said, I was ready to go. And on the second day after they had pushed back my scheduled time to leave, I checked again the Greyhound schedule and they said, it's a possibility it may, your bus may end up leaving out. And at that point, I told the guy that I was dating at the time, I said, "Hey, drop me off at the Greyhound bus station and I'm just going to wait." And he says, "Well, what happens if your bus doesn't go out?" I said, "Well, you know what? I got faith in my God that he's going to have my bus go out and I'm going to leave that day." And I said, "If I don't leave that day, I'm going to spend the night because I'm going to go to New York." That's just how adamant it was about going. So anybody that's listening to this episode, please take this as an example of what not to do. Okay? Got it. So my bus actually ended up leaving, which was great. I mean, it was still a lot of snow, but it wasn't as bad as the previous days when the snowstorm came in. Y'all, it took me, I want to say, maybe 2 days, 2.5 days to get to New York. I literally went. I went to New York at that time with two suitcases and one duffel bag of stuff. Yes, that's all I had. But I was the happiest girl in the world because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm about to move to New York." And as I'm driving home back to Michigan, a couple of days ago, I was laughing to myself in the car because I think back on just the nonsense that I did to make my dream of living in New York happen. You- I could write a book, let me tell you. Anyways, My god brother, he was staying with his grandma in the Bronx, and she was gracious enough, God rest her soul, to let me stay with them for as long as I needed. And she basically said, there's it's not a big thing for you to stay with us. We will turn the living room into your own bedroom. You will have your space. We will give you as much time as you need to find a job, to eventually, if you wanted to, find you a place to rent, or if that's what I wanted to do. And I was so thankful and so appreciative of that, because they really didn't have to do that. And I once I landed, well, not landed, once I arrived, my god brother came to pick me up from the bus station. And I was so excited. And as we drove to the Bronx from the bus station, first off, the bus station that the Greyhound bus is at, and I want to say it might be in Midtown, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So you can pretty much tell at that point, I wasn't from there. I was just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. So as we're driving to the Bronx, I was just taking in all the sights, and I was just so blown away from what I was seeing, and that, oh my gosh, I'm about to literally make this happen. And everything, as soon as I got settled, was able to really get acclimated with a lot of stuff within days. My godbrother started teaching me how to take the subway, because that was a new thing for me, because here in Detroit, especially Michigan, we don't have subways. Either you're going to get the bus, or you got your own car, or you're going to be walking. And good luck on that walking part. You better hope wherever you're trying to get to is not far. And I was just so blown away. He taught me how to use the subway, and, how to read the subway schedule, everything. And at one point he said, this, okay, just a little side note right here, right? So once I got me a job, the first job, he says, you need to learn how to also understand and read the bus schedule here in New York, because it's not like it is back in Michigan. I told him, I said, listen, my friend, I don't need to learn the bus schedule, okay? Because I took the bus back in Detroit. I'm good. I'm going to focus on taking the subway. And I'm telling him this because this is a new experience for me. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to be taking a bus. Get out of here. He says, I'm telling you, you need to learn the bus schedule, because if anything happens, especially to the train route that you're taking, you're going to have to improvise and come up with another way to get to your job. I'm like, dude, whatever. Okay, so so right after that, guess what happened? 2 days later, the train that I normally would take, which is the 6th, decided it wasn't running. So I was screwed. I had no way I had to figure out, like, really quick, how the hell am I going to get to work? And that's when I said, he did know what he was talking about, even if he was born and raised in New York. So yeah, that was just a little side note. I learned how to, improvise if need be, if the trains were like kind of screwed up or wasn't running or whatever. After about 3 months of living with them, I finally moved to Harlem. And I was a little apprehensive about Harlem, because and this is why I say, never go by what you see on television, or what you see on the news, or what people tell you, because you have to sometimes, with safety in mind beforehand, you have to experience things for yourself, so that at least, whether it's good or bad, you can say, well, okay, I experienced that. I had this notion of mine of what Harlem was. So when I ended up going and looking at a room for rent, because I actually rented a room, because New York is expensive, just like California, if not more. It I didn't realize that I had crossed over from the Bronx to Harlem until the lady that I was eventually going to rent the room from told me, because we're walking around and she's showing me just, oh, how the area is getting revitalized. You got a lot of new restaurants and stuff coming up. A lot of the brownstones were being renovated or being renovated. And I asked her, I says, hey, we were on 125th in Madison. And I go, hey, so where exactly is is this place at? Like, where exactly are we?" She goes, "Oh, we're in Harlem." I was like, "I'm sorry, say what now?" It's just like, this is not what I pictured Harlem to be. But when I finally moved there, I took so much opportunities just to go out and experience Harlem. And I would recommend anybody that goes to New York, please go to Harlem. Don't just don't just have your trip based in just Midtown Manhattan on West 34th Street. All of that in Times Square, all of that is great, but experience Harlem because Harlem, it was, I'm pretty sure it still is. It was amazing back when I lived there. I got to just, as I was driving home, reminisce about just taking that leap of faith and actually moving to New York. I even got to see the ball drop, not once, but twice. The first time I seen it, it was dead cold. It had snowed. It was like raining a little bit, and it was about five or six of us. And even though I was just like, it's cold as hell out here, it was the best experience ever. And so was the second time. And I said, wow, I got to see the ball drop. I got to go see a play. I actually got to do a little bit of background work in like different TV shows while I was there. It was just, I took full advantage of that. And I want to say, because of that move and that leap, it has inspired me on so many levels to just continue to take leaps, to continue to stay faithful and just grab at my dreams, but not only just mine, but continue to just inspire people. And I tell people, look, if I can move to New York on $250, which by the way, lasted me until I got my very first paycheck. And that was maybe, I want to say, I was in New York maybe a few weeks before I started to work. That's just how serious I was. I was like, oh no, I am not coming here to be lazy. And one, I had bills to pay. I'm here to come to work. And so that 250, I stretched it. When I tell you, I learned the value of a dollar. Again, as I said earlier, I would not recommend people saying, I'm going to move to New York and take $250. You could try it if you want to. I can tell you it may not work out. So I was just blessed. I'm just going to tell you that. But it it helped it that move helped me to inspire not only myself continually as I continue to do daily, but inspire others. And the drive, when I was driving through Utah and Colorado and just looking at the scenery, and just because this is the same scenery that I saw on my way to California, it just brought back how just blessed I've been by just taking that leap of faith and just doing it, you know? And I I get the chance, not a lot. Like I said, sometimes people, when they find out, oh yeah, I've lived here and I live there, they always are so fascinated by New York. And I say, I am still fascinated by New York because without New York and all the experiences that I had there, there's no way I would be able to go to the UK and study and live, even if that was a brief moment. I would not have been able to go to California and live there almost 3 years, you know? And not only that, but I wouldn't be, without that experience of New York, I wouldn't be thinking about contemplating moving to Japan in March. I just had to share this because I I literally thought about this on my drive home. And I said, you know what? This has to be the next episode because I feel like this episode will put a spark in somebody's heart. Whatever dream you may have, you got this. Just take that leap. Take that leap. I did. I took a New York leap on $250, and look how I turned out. Quite fantastic, I might say. So anyways, my moonbeams, have a great rest of the day. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I will talk to you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.